Welcome back, Cracked fans, to another edition of the Cracked Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. One quick note before we get into today's conversation with Florida men's tennis head coach Bryan Shelton. If you have not already, and honestly at this point, why wouldn't you, have signed up for our free John Isner signed racket giveaway, go do that right now. And the way you sign up for that competition, and again, we want to give a huge thank you to our new friends at ArrowBar for giving us this signed Isner racket as a holiday giveaway to our listeners. All you have to do to sign up, leave a review on this podcast, the Great Shot podcast, the Mini Break podcast, and your name will be entered into our raffle. We will pick the lucky winner, I believe, tomorrow. So go get your sign up in if you haven't already. Time is running out. And again, it's the perfect holiday gift. You don't want to have to run and do shopping in person. Ugh. It's winter storm season too. Do you really want to trust everything to Amazon? Do you really want Amazon to have all of your information already? Especially in a moment of panic now. You don't want to just concede like that. You want to get this. This is the sort of gift. If you're listening to this podcast, you certainly have a loved one who you know will appreciate. So go sign up for this raffle while you have a chance. Get yourself a shot at winning this signed John Isner racket. But with that in mind, the reason you're here today, the reason we want to get into it, it's our continuing our conversations on our College Contender Series, looking at the top 10 teams that ended the 2019 season and previewing their teams for the 2020 dual match portion of the college year. Today we talked to men's tennis head coach, as I mentioned, for Florida, Bryan Shelton. And for listeners who don't remember his team last year, they really took the college tennis season by storm. It was a very young team. I think 4 freshmen filtered in and out of the lineup in Sam Griffiths, Andy Andrade, Lucas Greif, and Duarte Valli. Of course, they also had players like Oliver Crawford, Alfredo Perez, Johanna Singleton. So a strong nucleus, but then you bring in such a talented freshman class. And yeah, they struggled at the indoors, but they ended up going undefeated through the SEC regular season, lost one of my favorite matches of the year in the SEC semifinals of the conference tournament at home to Tennessee, only to then beat them at home in a rematch in the round of 16. I mean, those are the sort of rivalries you live for, and as a young college tennis player, those are the sort of experiences that benefit you so much as you learn to deal with the pressures and the stakes that come with the upper levels of college tennis. So this is a Florida team that brings back a lot of talent and, an incredible amount of talent. 25-4, they were NCAA semifinalists last year, SEC regular season champs, and now they bring in a bunch of talented freshmen as well. So this really is a fun roster that Coach Shelton's got to play with. And so Chris and I, Chris Halioris, of course, who is joining me as he has throughout these coaching interviews, we ask him about that roster. How do you shuffle, making sure all of these guys, all talented players, get opportunities to play, to develop, while also ensuring that you know which 6 you want to ride with come NCAA season. Now, doubles was a thing that Florida struggled with last year in their biggest matches, and Coach Shelton talks about that. The strategy they have to address that this year. And all of these things are going to be really interesting things to watch as this Florida season unfolds. But as Coach Shelton alludes to, there's a reason everyone's very high on this team, and it's because on paper, the talent they possess, the team energy, I suppose, they espouse to everyone who surrounds them. It's a really fun team to watch, and we are really excited for them here at Cracked Racquets, and we are also excited for you to listen to this interview. So without further ado, here is mine and Chris's conversation with Florida men's tennis head coach Bryan Shelton.
But right now it's start time!
Joining us now on the Cracked Interviews podcast, as a former All-American player with 2 ATP titles to his name, it's quite obvious why a college prospect would trust tonight's guest to develop his or her game. And though his win over Michael Stitch happened before all of his current players were born, his status as a national championship winning coach is a topic about which he can still toot his own horn, as naming his Florida team the preseason title favorites is an opinion held by multiple Cracked Racquets prognosticators. We are absolutely delighted to be joined tonight by head coach Bryan Shelton of the Florida Gators. Coach, welcome to the Cracked Interviews podcast.
Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is absolutely our pleasure, and I know this is the portion of the year where things wind down for you, but I'm curious, how is your holiday season? Everything's going well with you?
Yes, it is. My daughter's a freshman at South Carolina. She's playing on the women's tennis team there, and she got home a couple days ago, and I was at the Orange Bowl recruiting and actually double dipping because my son was playing down there as well. And so now we're all back home in Gainesville, got the whole family together, and just enjoying some quiet time with them.
Oh, I can only imagine. That's got to be nice for you. Is it a violation if you want to go hit with your daughter and you're just like, let's just go hit? Are they going to be like, whoa? NCAA's like, you can't do that.
I'm not too worried about that one. If I get in trouble for hitting with my own kids, I'll take it.
And for you, I was going to say, I know she is, you said, a college player, a D1. Obviously, is she beating you at this point?
Oh, yeah. I think they can both take me out right now. I'm not moving quite as well as I used to.
Yeah, you mentioned that coach, and I was talking to Trevor recently, and then that thought came up about Ben. I said, I guess like with the kind of looming violations that could be there, Ben can't really just go with his dad to school and hit with the guys, right? Can he? I mean, he can hit with you, but you can't. He can't go out and hit with the guys unless they were just friends off, not a practice kind of thing, right? I mean,
that's right. That's
got to be such a really tough line as a dad to be like, man, I have this great access to all this stuff, and I have to be so careful about what I let my own son do.
That's really true, Chris. It's one of those things that the NCAA rules are there to protect everybody, and sometimes you scratch your head and think, how could this possibly be hurting somebody? But it's the way it is. And so we're in a small town here in Gainesville. It's a college town, and there aren't a ton of tennis players here for Ben to hit with. So unfortunately, with my daughter off at school, I get the brunt of it. So we go early in the morning. Usually when we say dark and early, we're usually on the court, between 6:30 and 7. And get about 2 hours in before I start individuals with guys on the team. So that's kind of our daily program. And then he tries to scratch and claw and find something in the afternoon after school. But he goes to a regular school. It's not homeschooled like a lot of the tennis players are. And so it's kind of nice for us to be able to have that time in the morning to get some work done, where he starts his day like that and then goes to regular school and kind of has a regular life, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and Coach, you mentioned the fact of spending time with your kids, getting to hit with them, but in an interview or a comment I believe you gave to Tennis Takes, you were talking about, and this is an early tangent, but the fact that the NCAA, you would like to be able to spend more time with players to help their development further. I think it's like an 8-hour-a-week limit during the season, and I'm curious for you, obviously you want to spend as much time on the courts with your kids as you can, but why do you think that rule should in particular be examined?
Well, it's just it's difficult. We have players that come to the University of Florida because they want to get better, they want to develop, and some of them have aspirations to go on and play professional tennis. And as you know, this game is a global game, and there are a lot of players that are 17, 18, 19 that are no longer going to school, and so they're putting 100% of their energy and effort into making it professionally. And when you have guys that are driven, that are smart, and motivated to work, and you tell them that we can only do 8 hours per week, that we could actually help you out there on the court or in the gym, and they kind of look at you funny, like, are you kidding me? Because they came here. I mean, in the recruiting process, we always tell prospects that if you really want to get better, if you really love the game, if you really love to compete, then Florida's going to be a good place for you. But if you don't, I promise you, that's not the place you want to be. And so we try to weed players out in the recruiting process to make sure we're only getting players that are all in. And so those players, they don't like the 8-hour-a-week rule. They want to continue to be coached. They want to have some structure laid out for them. And there's some positives that come along with it because it forces their hand to kind of figure some things out on their own. And our captains have to take over and they do practices with the guys on their own. But unfortunately, we can't even be on the court with them at all. So during that time, except for the 8 hours. And so, it's frustrating, because we're minimizing what we could be doing with the resources that we have.
The term counterproductive comes to mind. I completely agree with you. And, given it's 2019, us and a lot of other tennis media outlets have been looking at the past 10 years of tennis. And for you, your perspective now stretches 30 years, though you only look 30 years old. So you don't, you play the part well, Coach. But you've seen the way the game has developed. In other interviews, you've mentioned how, given the rising physicality, in particular on the men's side, it's harder for players to make breakthroughs early. And you talk about getting that development. For you, over the your perspective as both a player and now a coach in college for 20 years, how has the game changed to where college, going to college, making that decision has, do you think it's become more beneficial than maybe in the 80s, in the 90s, early 2000s when players were just making the jump to the pros directly?
Certainly. I think there's many factors, Gruskin, that come into play there. You see a guy like Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal, and if they were playing back in the 80s and 90s, they would have retired by now. There was very few. There was only Jimmy Connors and a couple others that kept on playing. Pete Sampras and a lot of those guys, they retired much earlier, which opened up opportunities for younger guys to come in and fill in the void or fill in those spots. Well, now players are staying out there longer. They're peaking later, which just gives less room for players to break into the top 100. Which is where you're really making money. And so, to go out there at 17, 18, 19-year-olds now, it may take you another 4, 5, 6 years to break in. So why not go to school? Why not continue to get physically stronger, develop your game, mature? I think one of the toughest things that players have to get used to when they go and play professional tennis is they have to get used to losing. Because during their junior careers, they probably won a lot of tournaments and a lot of matches, and their winning percentage was really high. Well, a 500 winning percentage in the pros is really good. But if you're playing junior tennis or college tennis, it's not very good. And so you take a beating, and you've got to be mature enough to handle that, because a lot of people lose heart when they start losing multiple matches. I mean, I have a kid that loses 3 matches in a row on our team, and I got to kind of talk him off the ledge. you do that, but you do that professionally, that's just common. You're going to sometimes go on I once lost almost 13 matches in a row, before I broke through. And you alluded to it earlier when you talked about Wimbledon and me beating Michael Steek. I ended up reaching the round of 16 that year in 1994. But prior to that tournament, I had lost 12 or 13 matches in a row. And I had to continue to have the mindset, this next week's going to be the week that I break through. And fortunately, I had some good people around me that kept encouraging me and helping me through that. But I was also mature enough, because I'd been to college and I'd have some tough days in college and work through that many, many times. So I was prepared to kind of work through that process of losing on a Monday or Tuesday, practicing for 5 days, going to the next tournament, losing on a Monday or Tuesday, practicing for 5 more days, and on and on and on for 12, 13 weeks. I don't know how many kids could handle that, And so part of the deal is the maturity part. The physicality is certainly something that comes into play. And not very many open spots right now, because guys are just playing longer, and they're playing at a high level longer.
And so many of those aspects can be developed in college. I'm glad you mentioned it's not only the physical aspects of the game, but the mental side as well. Becoming, the difference between when you're 18 and 22, once you've experienced those 2 different years, are astronomical. I mean, those 4 years, especially if you're in a college campus, living on your own potentially for the first time, you learn so much about yourself. And I do want you mentioned some of the players you have now fit these categories well, guys like Sam Griffiths and Oliver Crawford, who have experienced both both pro and college success thus far in your careers. But it wouldn't be a Cracked Interviews podcast if we didn't have a quick tangent. So I want to just throw a question at you, and it's very random, but I'm going to give you some context. Chris, you can answer as well. Because it's best of the decades, we're looking back, and I'm curious, just so you know, I was a 2-star recruit on tennisrecruiting.net. Not sure how that translates to UTR, but how far back?
We'll give him about a 5, Coach. Don't worry.
How far back do you think, modern day me? So I'm 18. I'm at the peak of my powers. I have all of my modern skills. How many decades back do we have to go to where the tennis community would see me play and be like, oh my God, this guy is life-changing? Like, I feel like I would dominate Tilden in the 1920s, but like as you get towards the 40s, that's where it gets iffy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think we'd have to go back pretty far.
Well, because if I show up even with my Prince Graphite, Bill Tilden's like, what, you're using that full frame? And I'm like, dude, I don't know why you're using that plank of wood. Like, this is the 1920s. We've hit the Industrial Revolution. Learn.
So this is like 90s Gruskin versus 20s guys with wooden rackets. Is that the deal?
I mean, 90s Gruskin is 5 years old, so this is like 2000s, 2010s Gruskins. Yeah, but I really think like the 18-year-old
the other end here.
Yeah, 19-year-old me, and I would have stayed amateur to rack up as many Grand Slam titles as possible because you couldn't do that as a pro back in the day. I'm racking up at least, I think, 2 straight Rod Laver Golden Slams, and then I'm going pro and making my money.
Well, so I know Coach won't swear, but I'm just going to lay it right on the line here, Gruskin. Billie Jean would kick your Okay. I mean, and that's as far as we need to go here.
Yeah. 2 things can be true, but she's like the 70s and 80s. I'm not saying I could compete then. I mean, I'm saying 20s, 30s, pre-World War II for sure.
Man, I think there's some guys like Tilden that are just, I can't imagine what he would be thinking hearing you talk like this,
Well, it just seemed like I'm gonna take a backhand return on the rise. He's gonna be like, "What? Like who told you could do that?" And I'm gonna be like, "I'm not even chipping and charging. Watch me hit through this thing 2 hands." And he's like, "What?" It's just like he's blown away, and I'm like, I'm taking bows.
Unfortunately, I know some college coaches that we can get to come on this pod. The person I would really love to be on the other end of this conversation right now is Rod Laver. I would love to hear his response to that question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find an in for that one sometime.
Yeah.
No, gotta get the Rocket on this show. You're right.
No, he's going to hear that and be like, that's slander. But yeah, okay, that's our tangent for the day. I'll take that, Coach, as your way of saying, no, I would not be that good. And that's fine. I can accept that. But, speaking of being good or not, I don't think anyone who's a fan of college tennis would dispute your team coming off of one of its best seasons in your 8 years at the helm in Florida. You guys make the semifinals for the first time. I believe you go 26-4 overall. You're the 25-4, undefeated regular season during the conference. And it came with a very young team. So I'm curious, as you look back at the last year, maybe it didn't end the way you wanted, but how did you feel the season went?
I felt like we had a great year. It was like you said, it was a very young team, but it was a team that we had a lot of strength at the top of our lineup, and we were very deep. I mean, throughout the season, I think we rotated 8 or 9 players into the singles lineup, and we felt comfortable with all 9 guys, and so. That gave us a lot of depth. It allowed us to, when we got someone injured a little bit or someone who was a little bit sick, we didn't feel the need to have to try to push them to get out there and play for the team. We were able to rest guys who needed rest. And like I said, we won a lot of matches, gained a lot of confidence throughout the season. Some individual guys like Sam Griffiths as a freshman. I mean, what he accomplished last year was amazing. As the rookie of the year in the SEC. And, he held the number 2 position for us almost the whole season. So I was really, pleased with what we did at the top. I mean, Oliver Crawford was just a competitive beast. And then we had talent in other places. I think that the areas where we didn't do as well as I would have liked was in our doubles play. I felt like that was an area that we were a little bit behind the top programs around the country. And we've really tried to address that this fall. I think that we still could be just a little bit tougher. And so that's another area that we've addressed kind of with our fitness and our strength and conditioning program. Felt like we could up the ante there a little bit this year, which we have. And hopefully those things will pay dividends for us.
So speaking of doubles, Coach, I have to say, so first off, there's no way Crawford and Griffiths play 3 doubles again, right? Come on.
Yeah, I think someone might challenge us if we put them at number 3 again.
Yeah, and so that makes it even more amazing to me that, being able to play those guys at 3 doubles, that to your point, you didn't have kind of, the double success that probably we would have expected maybe to have. So I assume by your comments that you guys have put some good time into figuring out kind of what your pairings are going to look like this year. Obviously, Kess was a big part of that for the past years, and he's gone now. So you've got to fill a spot there. But you feel like you got a pretty good handle on pairings.
We do. I mean, there's some guys that, like I said, we're so deep. And that's one of the dilemmas that we have, which everybody says, hey, that's a good problem to have. Is that you have depth and you have guys that may not be in the lineup that can really play some good tennis. And so that's the hard part for me as a coach every year. Obviously, one of the goals is to win the SEC title. Another goal is to win the NCAA tournament. And along the way, you want your players to be getting better and developing. And obviously that comes first. The hard part for us is, you've got some guys there that can really play and they may be sitting on the bench. And that's the hardest part, is that everybody needs matches. Everybody needs to play. And so for me, that's what I struggle with the most, is wanting to get guys competitive opportunities out there. And we have the depth and the confidence in all these guys to put them out there. But I think Oliver and Sam, I think they just pair up so well together. They've done really well this fall. I think that's certainly a pair that we can put together and have confidence that they can win even at the top of the lineup. Johanna Singleton he's our only senior on the team, and he's a great doubles player, and he's actually played really well with Brian Berdusco, who didn't get a lot of playing time last year, but continues just to work his tail off. He does everything and then more to try to improve and get better, and he's gotten better. So that's a pairing that we like a lot, and we could go with, especially early on in the season. But we got a guy like Will Grant who's coming on our team in January, and and that's always tricky, trying to figure out where he's going to fit in. When you have a kid that's talented that comes in January, that's a very good doubles player. We don't have a whole lot of time before we jump into big matches. And so trying to figure out where he's going to fit in. But we've already had some success with Duarte, Vale playing with Andy Andrade. So that could be a natural pair. They played in the NCAA tournament for us last year and did really well. Lost a very tight match against Texas when they had I think they had 1 or 2 match points in that match, which could have been a game changer for us. But so I think we certainly have pairs that have played a lot together. That we feel very confident in, and I think we've improved in our skill sets. This fall, what I had the guys doing, I had the guys serving and volleying on first and second serve every point. We won't do that in the spring every point, but I wanted them to really work on it and get confidence with it, so that could be an option for us to be able to employ that a little bit more and play a little bit more aggressively.
And to the larger point, Coach, about balancing opportunities and the talent you have on your roster, last season in doubles it was a thing, but you guys had 8 players play singles matches during the dual match season, and 8 players very all justified in wherever they win the lineup. You look at one of the guys who was left out at the end, Lucas Greif, who goes 8-1 at 5 singles, 3-1 at 6 singles. So certainly that's ridiculous. And well, no. Yeah, your other option is the 9-0 Duarte Valle at 6 or 8-2 McLean Kessler. So I think that's okay that you went with those. I don't think anyone would doubt that. But my question to you on that note is, because there is something to the way you find out how good your players are, obviously, is by playing them in matches. But at a certain point, and a team that comes to mind before Virginia won their 3 in a row that freshman year for that 2017 recruiting class, it was hard because they had 8 guys, and how do you find spots? How do you find the exact rhythm you want at 4 through 6 when you have so many interchangeable options? And so I guess that's my long way of saying, Coach, how do you balance making sure everyone gets opportunities with being able to say at the end of the year, all right, guys, this is our 6?
Yeah, I think, we have to use the non-conference schedule to be able to put some different pairs together and give opportunity, maybe take a pair out. What we've done this year, if you look at our schedule, you'll see that we're going to play 3 double headers this year for the first time. And I've never been a big fan of playing the double header in the season just because it's a long season and the guys can physically get worn down throughout the spring. And you want to be peaking when you get towards the end of the regular SEC season and going into the SEC tournament and the NCAAs. And I always see teams playing all these double headers, and I think they're going to wear themselves out. Well, we're 12 deep now. We've got 12 guys on this team, and I've got to create opportunities for these guys that are working their tails off and doing the things that we're asking them to do. And so for them to be able to wear the blue and orange and actually represent Florida in a match and get out there and play, they deserve that. And like I said, we're going to find opportunities to get some of those guys playing time and get them out there playing. So the double headers will help us with that a little bit. And some of our non-conference matches, we've got to be willing to mix it up a little bit to give guys some playing time and just see how they do under the gun, under fire. And, if you're trying to win every single match and that's your biggest goal, to go undefeated, and I think you don't fully realize your potential. And so we got to be willing to lose a match here or there and try some different things. But like you said, once it gets down to crunch time, we're going to have to make some decisions. By the time we get into the middle of our SEC season, we need to know who we're going with if we're healthy, and try to ride those guys out towards the end so that they gain some confidence in themselves. They get into their best tennis. And like I said, you need repetition to be able to play well. And so if you're taking a guy in and out, it's really hard for him to get that continuity that he needs so that he gains confidence that when he goes out there and takes the court, he feels like he's going to win. Because that belief system is huge. And if I'm playing around with him and taking him out one match and he's not sure if he's in or out, how do you gain a lot of confidence?
No, case in point would be, look at the way your team at the indoors last year, 1-2, and then you rip off a winning streak and go undefeated through SEC conference play. And yeah, it's certainly a better position to have 12 guys than it would be to have 7, and you're 1 injury away from catastrophe. So it's an enviable problem. But for you talk about getting that sort of gritty experience, the things you can't replicate in practice. And of course we will talk about your 2020 team, I swear. But last year, 2 of my favorite matches in sequence were that SEC conference semifinal loss against Tennessee, only to play them again in the round of 16 and beat them. I mean, 2 of the better matches. of the season, certainly. And don't worry, yeah, I started with the loss, but I ended with the win, Coach. I'll keep it fair. And, that's the sort of thing you can't replicate. And so I'm curious for your team to have – so many of your guys last year were playing that match, or, you may have lost 4-0, but still NCAA semifinals. That's a huge accomplishment. How do those sort of experience, how did your team rally together around those sorts of things to help move forward?
Yeah, it's incredible. I always say, especially since I was able to play college tennis and play professionally and have some success out there, I always say that there's nothing like being part of a team. I mean, it is one of the best things in the world. And so when you lose like we did to Tennessee at home, okay, it was at home. It was the SEC tournament. We had just gone undefeated in the league. On an amazing run. We beat them at Tennessee in the regular season. Now we're playing them at home, and we go up in the match. And for them to win that match, and for us to lose that match, and then for us to be around at our facility the next day when the SEC network is televising the finals match with Mississippi State and Tennessee on our home courts. I mean, that was the bitter, bitter, bitter pill to swallow for all of us. And to have the opportunity to play those guys a third time at our house again, I hope you got to see our hype video before that match. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And we really built it up. And it was an epic match again. It wasn't like we were prepared, but so were they. And I got to, tip my cap to Chris Woodruff and their whole team, because they came with an expectation that they beat us again, and they fought us tooth and nail to the end, and it was another great match and pretty cool. We got a great picture that's framed of Lucas Greif clinching the match. Oliver Crawford's got him in his arms. We've got 4 or 5 guys up mid-air jumping for joy, and one picture captured all of this. And then the president of our university is in the background right at the side fence with his hands up in the air. I mean, it's the coolest picture ever, and that's what it's all about, the agony of defeat and the thrill of victory, and when you do it, like I said, with a team, both of those things are memories that'll last forever for those guys. The loss, that epic loss, and then the epic win. I mean, both great things. And then, like you said, making it to the semifinals of the NCAA tournament, playing in the state of Florida where our fans could come down to Orlando to Lake Nona and be part of that, for us to play Baylor in the quarterfinals, and play just such a complete match, our best match of the year, and to follow that up with another great match against Texas, the eventual champions. Really just a great year for us. Felt like we achieved a lot, but felt like we still left some on the table.
So let's turn then from that, Coach, to this year's team. Obviously, you lose Alfredo and you lose Cass, 2 guys that were for sure and playing in one way or shape or another. Alfredo had some injuries to battle off, but right. Cass was always in the doubles lineup and a lot of times in the singles lineup. And now you lose those guys, and you kind of, you have a lot of the same guys to fill the lineup with. But it seems like, and I think we all know in all likelihood, like Crawford and Griffiths in some order, right, are at the top of the lineup. But it gets a lot more interesting for you after that this year, right?
Sure it does. First I'll say is that those are 2 huge losses. I mean, losing Alfredo Perez and losing our emotional leader, McLean Kessler. I mean, those are 2 huge losses. I mean, Alfredo Perez he's a competitor. I mean, nobody hates losing more than he does. He has sometimes a hard time controlling his emotions, but it's because he cares so much. And the same thing can be said for McLean Kessler. I mean, I've never been around another college student athlete that has given me his heart and soul every single day, every practice, every match. This guy is the gamer of all gamers. So we lost a lot there, in those two guys, and it's really hard to replace that. What we still have is a lot of depth, but I think the chemistry part, I think as we go through the spring season, that's going to be something that's got to make sure we got to get that in place. And I felt like we did a pretty good job this fall, but we're going to have to do an even better job in the spring because, like I said, you play a match and 12 guys want to play singles and you put 6 out there. So do we have those 6 guys that are completely invested and emotionally attached to every single one of those matches when they're not out there playing? That's really important as part of the team. So we got to get that piece right. We got to make sure everyone's engaged. We got to make sure everybody's on board. Whatever the decisions that are made, those are going to be the best decisions for the team, and we need those guys to not just accept it and not try to do more to try to get themselves in the lineup, but just respect it. Respect that we're doing the best that we can for the Florida Gators, and hopefully they'll get an opportunity to play. But that piece is something that we're going to have to make sure we get right, because we certainly have the talent and the ability to be very successful this year, but talent and ability only gets you so far, and so we got to make sure our heart's in the right place every single time out, every practice, every match, because there's a lot of good teams. I mean, I'm sure you've talked with I know you guys have talked with the other top coaches in our league and top programs, and I mean, there's plenty of competition out there for the Gators. A lot of people that can beat us on any given day. And so we've got to make sure we improve throughout the season.
So I think, first of all, thank you for the shameless plug, Coach. Always appreciate that. Yes, listeners, we have talked to those other coaches as part of our College Contender Series. Go check those out on our fellow Cracked interviews. But sorry for that, Coach. But you mentioned this team being, this team has the talent. You're well aware because, you look through the other rosters, and there are a lot of good teams, but the other teams who made the semifinals or the finals, Texas, they lost 4 starters. Wake Forest loses Petros. They lose Borna up top. That's a huge loss. Your team does lose 2 huge contributors in Alfredo and McLean, but, as we've mentioned, you recruited well, and there's talent in the pipelines to replace them. It's not often that a team goes 25-4, makes the semifinals, and brings this many players back. Would you say the guys are aware of the opportunity, just given their experience where they're at, the opportunity available for them in 2020?
I think so. I think we don't have a team that talks about that stuff a lot. And they probably take that from the coaches. We had Steve Spurrier come in and talk to our team this fall. And he did talk about setting goals and that it's really important to put those things out in front early on. And then once you put them out there, you kind of know what you're going after. And then it's just get to work, put your head down and do the work and compete your tails off every day. And hopefully when you look up at the end of the year, you've reached your goals. So I think our guys recognize that, to a man. They all want to win the SEC title again and repeat there and defend our title. And these guys want to go further than the semifinals. I know that, but like I said before, a lot of people want those things. And I feel like our guys are willing to do the things that are necessary to achieve those things. I just know how hard they worked, even when we were not allowed to work with them. How hard these guys worked still, the hours they put in. They were still coming to the courts and practicing in the morning. They were still at the courts in the afternoon. I'm talking to these guys now over the winter break, and, they're out there playing and they're training and they're working. I mean, some of them aren't even at home and they're doing it. Oliver Crawford's in Charleston right now training, and Sam Griffiths is playing a wild card tournament in Orlando. These guys they're getting after it. And I talked to Oliver today, and he said, I've reached out to several of the guys today. I'm going to catch the rest of them tonight. Sam Griffiths has done an amazing job. Those two as our captains, they're leading the way, and you have to have that. You have to have guys in the locker room that are going to lead the way with this stuff in order for you to be successful. So these guys believe. Oliver said it today. He said, Coach, we're going to win it all this year, And I'm like, Oliver, let's keep focused on getting better. Keep focused on getting better. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got a lot of work to do between now and then, but he's excited, and our guys are excited, and they think that we can accomplish great things. But I was part of the winning national championship team at Georgia Tech back in 2007, and we honestly should have lost earlier in the tournament. And we didn't. We got a couple lucky breaks, couple things went our way, and we got through a couple tough matches that we probably shouldn't have. And I think it'll probably be that way for the team that wins this year. Hopefully that's the Florida Gators. But like I said, it's not just being good enough. You've got to have the right heart. You gotta execute in those key moments, and that the competition's going to be stiff. In those conditions, once you get to Oklahoma, you got to be mentally prepared for wind and everything else, and hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, so I guess one last question for you on the team, on the guys this year, Coach. And I know probably I might prod some coaches more than others into like maybe insight to lineup, but I know knowing both you and Tanner, it's truly from 3 down, right? It's going to be, I know that, and it's really the way you guys operate. It's whoever's playing the best at that given time, right? Given, obviously, there are rules as to how much somebody can jump, moving one spot a week, right? But outside of that, you guys are you're going to play whoever you think is playing the best, regardless of who you're playing, and you're not necessarily looking for matchups. But when I look at the results from the fall, the guy, after Sam and Oliver, the guy that stood out to me, at least, as just kind of really stepping out and making what looked like big improvements the fall, was Duarte. He seemed like he played really, really well in the fall, kind of setting up his run into the spring. Talk maybe about that, and then how has the fall gone for some of the other guys, at least in their singles play?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, he's got to be considered as, top of the lineup kind of a guy. Obviously Oliver and Sam are holding those first 2 spots, in what order, I'm not sure. They're both very deserving, but Duarte's, he's right there. I mean, he won, I think, his first 3 tournaments of the fall. And what's pretty neat about the fall that he had was he was here for a little bit of the summer, and he was training with us, and he was struggling, honestly, not playing with a lot of confidence. We hosted an ITA summer circuit event, and he lost to a kid that was maybe an 11.7 UTR. And it wasn't that he lost, but it was the way that he lost, playing with very little confidence, not a lot of joy. And, I could tell, like, he was in a place where he was questioning his goals. This is a guy that came in on fire, wanting to take over the world of tennis, wanting to be the best college player in the nation, wanting to go on and play professional tennis. And all of a sudden, over the last year, he started having doubts, like a lot of college student athletes have, about whether or not it was even feasible for him to achieve any of the goals that he had set early on. And for him to come into this fall, we sat down and we talked, and we said, I said to him, I was like, we got to help you find the love for the game again. And it seems like it's become a chore for you. How about we coach you less? how about we take the reins off and let you just see the ball and hit the ball. If you want to take the ball up the line, do it. If you want to step up on a return and look for your forehand and rip it for a winner, do it. If you want to go after your second serve and go for an ace, do it. We're not going to get in your way right now. We're just going to let you go out there and play freely and just have fun and just get after it. Every practice, every match, we're not coaching you, Duarte, because we've coached this guy a lot. And so we're trying something different with him. And, lo and behold, he starts practicing better. There was a tournament at UNC Wilmington early in the fall, and Tanner asked him if he wanted to go, and he said no. He had some other guys going to a professional event that same week that he didn't get into, but he didn't want to go to that UNC tournament. And so I said, Duarte, why don't you want to go? He's like, well, I just feel like if I go and I do well, it's not the strongest competition, maybe. And I thought to myself, come on, man, you know better than that. The only way for you to test out what we've been working on, what you've been doing, playing free, is for you to go out there and let it loose and let it fly and see what happens. Be willing to put it on the line. And he's like, you know what? You got me fired up just talking about it. I'm going to go. And so we end up getting him a ticket, and he goes with Tanner and goes and wins the tournament, comes back. He's flying high, and turns around. We take him to Georgia a week later. He wins their invitation. And then we come to regionals. We're hosting regionals. He wins regionals. 3 tournaments in a row. This guy is playing the best tennis of his life. I could not be happier for anyone. And the greatest part is that it was him. He wasn't coached into it. He felt like he gained full confidence because, we weren't coaching him that much. It was just him out there playing instinctively. And so that's been a lot of fun to see. So he's certainly a guy that is going to start high in the lineup this spring, and it's well-deserved. Other guys that have played well, we've got a bunch of guys that have had success at different places throughout the fall. Lucas Greif has. Johanna Singleton has played well at times. Josh Guger has played at a high level at times and sometimes not so high. It's been a little bit hot and cold. But Andy Andrade is just another guy that, for us, probably one of the most talented guys on our team. And certainly we feel like he can beat anyone on any given day. So he's probably the strongest next candidate for a position on our team. I would say that if I had to start him today, I'd probably start him at number 4 in the lineup. But all these guys, Blaze Bicknell had a great fall. I told you about Will Grant. And then Brian Berdusco, certainly someone that I think we can play in doubles at any point in time throughout the spring. I think he's definitely ready to play as well. And then we've got to figure out Will Grant and where we give him some opportunities to get his feet wet.
Of course, again, we talked about this earlier. It's a good problem to have when you have that much talent on the roster. I want to have some fun before we end, but a couple more serious questions if you'll indulge. You talk about earlier, guys coming to college in lieu of going straight to the pros, but on your team in particular, because you have so much talent, you have guys like Oliver and Sam playing pro tournaments in the fall and throughout the summer. How valuable do you think that pro experience is for a player while he's still in college? And then on the flip side of that is, does it get frustrating to you to know, even more so now than maybe in the past, players in college are going to look for pro tournament opportunities throughout the year, no matter what?
Yeah, I think, it's a double-edged sword. I think that the guys that are playing the tournaments in the summertime, I think that's that's valuable. I remember when I was at Georgia Tech and I was playing, to have the opportunity to go out in the summer and play. It was the summer circuit events back then, and to go play 5 weeks in a row, I felt like I got exponentially better. And so the guys that are willing to go out there and play the tournaments in the summer, I think they continue that spiral upward with their games. I think the ones that don't do those things and they go in a different direction with their summer months, I feel like those guys kind of plateau a little bit and don't continue to push forward with their games. And I can tell you so many players that put their rackets down in the summer. And we always said, if you're going to play for the Gators, you gotta be one that wants to play in the summer months as well. I mean, tennis, as you know, is pretty much a year-round sport. And so I think those opportunities are great for the guys to take advantage of. But on the other side, the guys that are playing tournaments like Oliver and Sam, Lucas Greif played a pro event as well this fall. I think sometimes they can miss out. They can miss out on what college tennis is all about, in a way, the team aspect, because all of a sudden they're going off on their own, maybe going off with one of our coaches. But even during the event, they're not able to get coaching on the court, which is one of the college aspects that I think is so special, is to be able to coach your players on the court while they're playing, to kind of help them figure out how to make adjustments, how to problem solve, how to think on the court. To be able to be out there with them allows you that opportunity to help them grow and progress at an even faster rate. And so sometimes you miss some of that when you're going off playing those pro events, and you miss a little bit of that connection that you have with your teammates. And so I think that, and sometimes you miss some of the coaching at home as well. Some of these guys are going off and playing tournaments on their own during the fall, maybe even spring. And so they miss out. Like I know there's several coaches that have told me, I won't name any names, but have told me that they only spent a few days with a certain player on their team because he was out playing pro events throughout the fall. And they only got him on the court to work on his game maybe 7 to 10 days. And I think that kind of defeats a little bit of the purpose of college tennis. I felt like our guys did a nice job. Sam Griffiths really wanted to work on a serve. He really wanted to develop that area. So he actually declined some opportunities that he had with wild cards to stay at home so that he could continue to work on his game. And Oliver Crawford, same thing. When he's had opportunities but realized he needed to put work in or do other things, he recognized that he needed to make good decisions with that stuff. But I think some can kind of almost overplay the pro events, and they lose some of the advantage that they have in being in college.
All right, Coach. So I'll give you one last question before we get to have a little fun in our rapid fire section.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier that Croft had already, he had talked to you earlier, and you were trying to rein him in a little, if you will. But
Right.
Obviously the guys are thinking that. But in your mind, so let's start. Before we get big picture. I mean, SEC, the goal. I mean, the SEC goal has to be win the SEC, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And then when we get to, beyond that, is it pretty, I mean, is it one of those things where, to a man, the goal is winning it all? Or are you going to give me one of these, well, we just want to do the best we can kind of answers?
No, I think, obviously you can only control so many things, but there's nothing wrong with shooting for winning a national championship. If you can't see yourself doing it, if you can't envision that, if you can't, if you're not willing to say that's what you want to go after, it's very difficult, I think, to achieve it. It's not something, like I said, that we'll talk about day in and day out, but we were very close last year. Okay. And we're a year more mature, and we've got as strong a top as we had last year, but but better. And we're even deeper this year, So I feel like, we're not afraid to put it out there. That those are the goals that we have, to win those 2 titles, to win that regular season title in the SEC again, and to go after that national championship. We're going to go after it with everything that we got, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I speak for college tennis fans everywhere when I say we are excited to watch your team play. I think, Chris was making a joke. He's like, and congratulations to Wisconsin at the end of last season. He was like, you guys are 9 months away from playing Florida at the start of the indoors. So obviously, we are excited to watch your team dual match season get underway and see you guys play. But before we let you go, not only, as we mentioned from the get-go, you have a wealth of professional playing experience, as well as collegiate experience, coaching experience, national championship, all of these different things. What we like to do with our guests to ask them about the many miscellaneous topics is run them through a rapid-fire series of questions at the end. More rapid-fire in the sense that the topics will be a wide variety, then you have to give a quick answer. But that sound good to you, Coach? All right, then, Westhoff, give me a rapid-fire sound effect, please. And just so you know, Coach, Chris and I will probably be alternating, but I'm going to start with a fun one. And we've talked, you mentioned this guy, big fan of his over the last 3 years. I think college tennis fans everywhere would acknowledge how good of a player he has been. But my first question to you is, what's the most angry you have ever been at a Johanna Singleton forehand?
Oh, my gosh.
Before he answers, the cynic,
rapid fire, you throw that at me?
the cynic in me, Gruskin, wants to say, is this kind of like the if a tree falls in the forest, do you really hear it? But okay, now that I've said that, go ahead, Coach.
I love every forehand he hits.
Oh, okay. Let's see how many more lies we can get out of Coach.
All right. I thought that would be a fun one.
All right, I got another one. So everybody knows you as this nice guy, and you have this image of the nice guy, Coach. When is the last time you either swore or raised your voice?
Oh, my goodness. Probably when I was at the University of Kentucky.
Oh. Very understandable. Very understandable.
Cedric brings that out in me. I don't know how.
It's that dungeon you play in there. That's how.
That had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is going to be an easy one for you. You or easier, I should say. You have played and coached both the pro set doubles versus no ad doubles, the full best of 3 set matches, completing matches in singles versus stopping short. I'm curious, which is your preferred scoring format?
8-game pro set, no ad scoring.
Ooh, I like that. That's a compromise.
Yes, right in the middle. It's just enough. You still, the better team will win, but there's a lot of drama in that, especially with the no ad scoring.
Yeah, what about the idea of playing out matches even after the dual match is finished?
Love it.
Yeah, just for development reasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I always vote for us to play it out.
I like it.
All right. So here you go, Coach. I can think of multiple of these and different reasons for each one, but the toughest place to play in the SEC and why?
Ooh, I'd say Georgia's the toughest place to play for us. For whatever reason, we always play them on a Friday night. And the drinks are flowing there on Friday night. And I mean, these guys, they dress up in gator gear just to mock us. And they're pretty hard on us there. But I love it. I mean, that's part of the great thing of college tennis is to be able to play in atmospheres like that where the crowd is really into it and it really feels like you are the away team.
You're reminding me, I can't remember whether it was last year or the year before. I remember a Georgia fan showing up as a Florida fan trying to draw a penalty.
That's right. That's right. Very creative. You got to give creative points for that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh my my God, no, that's ridiculous. All right, Coach, I have one I've been asking a bunch of, or all of our guests recently who have come on coaching-wise, and it's a stupid, I'm going to let you know, like most of the things I'll bring up here, it's stupid. But I think one of the most boring and changeable aspects of college tennis, and you think it's a big aspect I'm going to talk about, but in fact, it's the coin toss at the start of each match. I just think we can do better as a fan. So I have two options for you. You tell me which you prefer more. A, on each of the courts, you just, to get the competition rolling, you play rock, paper, scissors. And it's just, from the get-go, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And you're going to have the team meeting where you're like, Oliver, you cannot keep throwing scissors. Like, everyone knows you throw scissors. We see it on the live stream each and every time. Like, it's in the scouting report. He throws scissors. So for that aspect. But B, like, imagine you sweep that and how fun the crowd is. But my other option, I should say, is in lieu of that, at the beginning of the match, the coaches play a point against each other. Drop and hit, no winner off of the feed, and whoever wins gets to decide the serving order on all of the courts.
Let's go rock, paper, scissors. I love that game. I mean, we'd be working on that all day long, the mental side of that, I'm talking about being mentally tough. We got to figure out what they would choose, and be one step ahead. Because if you can beat them there, just imagine the advantage you have starting that match.
I've said that for years, Coach. If we, I went to Michigan. If we would have, swept all six, just throwing rocks straight across. It's madness.
We're going rocks today, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Just sorry, I have to do it.
Oh, all right. So Coach, is a little on the more serious side. With Ben now, verbally committed, is that, I assume that you kind of still filled the coach role with him. Does that make for you, hey, I'm here at least until he's gone, if not longer? Or is he thinking, Dad, aren't you ready to be done yet? I want somebody else in there by the time I enroll.
Oh, he knows he's stuck with me now. So, yeah, no, it's I'm loving it. I love working at University of Florida. They give us everything that we need to be successful. And they let me do my own thing. I've got the best ops person in the world in Kate Hart, and she takes care of almost everything else. I work with Tanner on the recruiting, and he's one of the best recruiters in the business. And so I really get to focus a lot of my attention on player development, which is what I love. That's where my passion is. And so to be able to do what I love and not have to do some of the other stuff that a lot of coaches have to do, the day-to-day work that Kate Hart takes care of or the things that Tanner takes care of. I've got one of the best volunteer assistant coaches in the world in Scott Perlman. So I'm going to work with good friends, with good people. I've got a great team. I've got all the resources. Why would I want to go anywhere else? So yeah, he's stuck with me for a while, I think.
No, I think he and Florida Gator fans everywhere are happy to hear it. Last one. Can you tell the Cacciatoris apart? Just honestly.
Yeah, we got one. He's got a hairy mole. That's what we say anyway. Harry Cacciatori has a mole on the side of his right cheek, and so somebody said that one day, hairy mole. And so that's an easy one, but no, I mean, honestly, I look at him, I see two totally different people, whereas in the beginning I couldn't tell them apart, but I've got it now.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, that's all I got. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, so, Coach, I may not share Gruskin's gift for poetic pose, but I damn sure know what everyone else knows, and that's that while we may have many haters, my preseason pick this year is none other than your Florida Gators.
Yeah, That's definitely Westhoff. Give me an applause. That's as good of a place to end as any. Coach, seriously, thank you for putting up with all of the nonsense tonight. I know I'm speaking on behalf of Chris and college tennis fans everywhere, and I sincerely say we are so excited for your Florida Gators team and appreciative of all you've done to help grow and improve our college tennis sport over these past 20 years. So good luck to you and your team. Happy New Year to you and them as well. And can I end by getting a Go Gators out of you?
Go Gators. And guys, I appreciate what you guys are doing to grow the game as well. I mean, it's fun hearing what you guys do and reading your blogs and all the stuff. I think you're creating an interest for the game that is just very needed, and really appreciate that you guys love it the way that you do and helping making college tennis that much better too. So I appreciate you guys. Happy holidays.
Okay, quickly, did you hear that rhyme? He appreciates all we do and something too. It was a rhyme. It was beautiful. I love it, Coach. I'll know you appreciate us when I see the rock, paper, scissors meeting happening. That's what. Yeah, but seriously, take care and Happy New Year, Coach. Good luck to your team.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
But right now it's star time.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Florida men's tennis head coach Bryan Shelton. I do apologize for the tangents. Look, that's half the fun of these Cracked Racquets things. So I appreciate him saying I would not win any slams in the 1920s. I really think I would. And if you listeners, agree with me, which I don't know why you wouldn't, go watch on YouTube. Club Tennis National Finals 2017. Don't watch after we go up. I think it's 15:30, 2:0, 15:30. Don't watch after that because it goes downhill. But certainly, you'll see. Again, throw me in the 20s and a two-handed backhand. They'll be like, what? And I'll be like, I know, man. Just wait till you see what this Novak Djokovic character is going to do in 80 years. Or I guess 90 years. God, that's crazy. But yeah, so really appreciate Coach Shelton's candidness about the many different things that go into building a college tennis program and, trying to sustain excellence, trying to build off of excellence and make the jump to be a national title contender, of course. Coach Shelton's experience, second to none as both a player in college and on the professional circuit, as well as he's a national championship coach. So it's going to be really fun to watch him steer these Florida Gators. And again, we appreciate him taking the time to come on. And another coach who, 7 up, 7 down. We've hit all 7 head coaches. All we've got left, Texas, Ohio State, Wake Forest. I don't know if we've reached out to those head coaches individually, but come on, guys. Peer pressure. The other 7 did it. You're going to be the coach that doesn't come on the Cracked Interviews podcast before the season. That is not a good omen for your team. So we look forward to continuing this series throughout the weeks to come. And, of course, I will remind you, listeners, one last time before the giveaway is over, our friends at ArrowBar kind enough to send us a signed John Isner racket to give away to you listeners in the spirit of the holidays. The way you sign up for that raffle, you leave a review on this podcast, the Mini Break podcast, the Great Shot podcast. Leave your contact information. If you leave multiple reviews across multiple platforms, you will have multiple entries into the raffle. And we will try and get this to you so you have the holiday gift you can want. Maybe you can get some good indoor serving in yourself over the holiday break against some family. So go sign up for that. And again, thank you to our friends at ArrowBar, where you can go order their tennis-specific energy bars. So very delicious. Get 30% off with our promo code CRACKED30. Huge shout-out, as always, to the super producers, Max Fliegner and Daniel Westhoff, who have a fuck of an editing job to do, as always, and kill it day in, day out. Fueled by ArrowBar. That's where they get their energy from. So it's not only tennis where it helps. You want to be a more productive person. You want to be able to produce, I think it's like 10 podcasts a week. Shout out to Westhoff and Fliegner. You need some proper energy, and ArrowBar will get you there. But with that in mind, for my wonderful co-host, Chris Halioris, for our lovely guest, Florida men's tennis head coach Bryan Shelton, who, again, thank you so much for coming on, and for our super producers, Max Fliegner and Daniel Westhoff, and everyone at our teams at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. We will see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.